Okay. So the topic that I'm going to deal with today is about the notes and referencing and citations and appendix, etc. These are the things which normally the researchers, they do not take much care, and they do not pay much attention to all these topics because they think that somehow this is not part of the main research. But why this is not main part of why this is important, that I would like to tell you that uh, you might have heard one term, plagiarism, and the core focus of plagiarism is centered around the citations and references and notes. To what extent one particular sentence in a paper or a book is copied or plagiarized or not plagiarized, it depends that whether it is referred or it is cited in the text or not. So the question is, why to take the trouble of citation and reference? I have heard many students, many researchers saying that this is my own work, this is my original work, and they think that if they do not give proper citation, then the weightage of their work will be more, or they will be given more mileage, or they will be uh, it will be more valued article than if it is if the references and citations are given. But these references and citations are very important, and why these references and citations are important, that we are going to discuss in this part of the session. Then we shall discuss about the notes, and then we shall also discuss about the appendix part of the paper. So the question is, why to take the trouble? So from the childhood, we have been taught that it is not proper, it is wrong to take other people's thing without their permission. From the childhood, all over the world, we have been taught that if any particular product, any particular commodity, if it does not belong to us, we should not use that, we should not take it. And even if you want to take something which does not belong to us, we should take proper permission for that. That is the core principle, the core values we have been given right from our childhood. But when it comes to research, we normally forget this very basic principle of life, that we should not use someone else's property without their permission. We have been given the lesson from the childhood that we should not steal, don't steal. But when it comes to the intellectual property, we just forget this basic tenet. So we forget or ignore this basic tenet of social living while dealing with the unprotected intellectual property. Now here the terminology is unprotected intellectual property. There are two types of intellectual property. One is which is protected through copyrights and patent. So definitely we cannot use them because it is protected, and if we use them, any copyrighted material or any patented material, definitely we will be facing the music, and we will have to face some legal consequences. But the question is unprotected intellectual property, and simply it is unprotected, it does not mean that anybody is open to use it. Yes, it is unprotected and it is in the public domain, so, and everybody is welcome to use that. But the very basic principle of this unprotected intellectual property is that even though you are using it, but you should give proper credit for that. You should acknowledge it. And if you acknowledge it, then actually we are following the very basic, the core principle of academic writing, that is giving due citations and credits for someone else's intellectual work. If someone else have done some intellectual work and we are using that, then that person should be given credit, because tomorrow our paper will be published, and if someone else is using our work without giving a credit to us, we will not feel good. Similarly, that person who is the original author of that particular work, that particular paper, he or she should also be given proper credit for the work, for the academic work, intellectual work that the person has done. So many young researchers fail to acknowledge the owners and even flaunt them as if it were their own work. many young researchers, they do not acknowledge the honors, and they will just place the material, place the paper as if it is their own work. And actually it is a question of plagiarism. And my dear friends, plagiarism is a crime. If someone have done this crime, this plagiarism, then there is no mercy anywhere in the world. In India, in Bangladesh, in any other Asian countries, if someone is guilty of plagiarism, then that person will be penalized heavily. Depends on to what extent this plagiarism is there. And in India, we have seen the cases that a PhD degree of some of the researchers have been withdrawn simply because later on it was found that it is plagiarized. Some of the vice chancellor have been removed from the post of vice chancellor simply because it was found that when they did their PhD and at that time their PhD work or some of their papers were plagiarized, and that's why they have to lose their job. Okay, and the definition of plagiarism is, or what amounts to plagiarism is, to a large extent it depends whether you have given a due credit for the work that has been done by others, you have given or not. If you are using someone else's work and you are giving credit for that, this is not plagiarism. You are honestly saying that this particular line has been taken from so and so journal, so and so authors, and you can use their work giving due credit, and this will not be plagiarism. So how to do that? First thing is that, my dear young researchers, it's not shameful to borrow. Just now I have mentioned that there are many young researchers, they fail to acknowledge the honors and they just flaunt them as if it were their own work. Why they flaunt them? Because they think that if they tell that they have borrowed certain lines from some earlier researchers, then their utility, their weight, their importance will be reduced. It's not. It's not shameful to borrow. You can borrow someone else's idea, and by borrowing lot of ideas you can build your own idea, and you can give a new theory, new direction, new technology, new IPR can be given. So it's not shameful to borrow. First thing you must remember in mind that it's not a crime that you have borrowed something, but stealing is a crime without the permission or without acknowledging the original author. If you are using their work, then this is a crime. But borrowing is not a crime if you are doing it properly. And there are resources that sharing does not dry up. Okay, a researcher stands on the shoulders of those who went before him. Any researcher, they normally stand up on the shoulders of those who went before him. You are doing a research in a particular area. Suppose you are doing a research on financial market, and definitely you would like to know who are the other researchers who have done similar work in this area, and what methodology they have adopted, what was their finding, what sample they have taken, what was the tool that they have adopted. Definitely you will be interested to know. And after knowing all these things, definitely you will be designing your own methodology, your own research design. And you are designing your own research design. For that, you have to know what earlier researchers have done. And for that, you have to borrow. You have to do some literature review. And literature review is actually just giving citations only. If you just read any paper, you will find that in most part of the literature review, you will find only citations and references. That is, who are the other researchers who went before you in this particular domain. So one can borrow and combine insights from the different sources and create new insights and new knowledge. You can borrow and combine insights from the different sources. A few years back, one of my scholars, he was working in the area of equity share investment awareness, and when she was going for the literature review, she found that there are not much work in the area of equity investment awareness, but there are a lot of research in the area of financial literacy, financial awareness, financial planning. So she borrowed something from financial awareness, something from financial literacy, something from equity awareness, not directly equity investment, but something from the equity shares and equity investment. And combining all those insights from the literacy and awareness and financial planning, she built up the concept of equity share investment awareness. So that combining insights from the different sources, and by doing that, and you can create a new insight and new knowledge, that is possible. But we must acknowledge the borrowed ideas. The problem is most of the young students, they do not acknowledge these borrowed ideas. They just put it in the research paper as if it is their own idea, which is very serious and which is objectionable, and it is crime in the eye of law. So you must acknowledge the borrowed ideas. Complete and scrupulous acknowledgement of source document helps us to comply with the ethical principles of scholarly writing, which enjoins us. You must have heard about one terminology called ethical writing, ethics in research. And one very important domain or one very important aspects of ethics in research is giving these citations and references. And if you are just giving all the citations, all the references, you are acknowledging the author, original author, it means you are actually complying with the ethical dimensions of academic writing. There are other aspects also of ethical aspects of academic writing, but this one of the very important aspects of ethical dimension of academic writing, at least you will be complying with this aspect. But the question is, should we acknowledge or should we cite all the intellectual fund? The question is no. We did not acknowledge common intellectual fund. There is a huge fund of knowledge that belongs to anyone, like public roads. Like you don't require any special permission to walk on public roads. Similarly, there are a lot of knowledge which actually belongs to the public domain, and since it belongs to the public domain, it does not require any citation. For example, sun rises in the east. This is a knowledge we have, and sun rises in the east, if we are writing it in our paper, that can be written without giving any acknowledgement, because that knowledge someone might have invented maybe hundreds and thousands of years before, that sun rises in the east, or the sun earth revolves around the sun. But now over a period of time, it becomes up into the public domain, and it can be used without any acknowledgement, without any referencing. So it has been created by different people at different point of time, but it over a period of time, it became a part of the common intellectual fund. And since it is a part of the common intellectual fund, it need not to be acknowledged specifically. And in most cases, we don't even know who is the actual author of that. Like sun rises in the east, this is a knowledge, but if you ask who actually invented that, who actually discovered that sun rises in the east, we do not know. It is from the many like long time, hundreds and thousands of years, we have seen that sun rises in the east, and it need not to be cited. Like Bangladesh is an agrarian economy. It is known, it is in a public domain. Everybody knows that Bangladesh, India and Pakistan, or most of these Asian countries, they are agricultural economies. So that need not to be cited specifically. And another example is that neem has insectical properties, and looking directly at the sun during a total solar eclipse can damage eyesight, or smoking tobacco regularly can harm one's health. These are some of the knowledge that we have, and it is in the public domain. Like smoking tobacco, it causes some diseases like cancer. It is in the public domain, and if someone is using this particular knowledge, it need not to be referred. Just as we don't need anyone's permission to walk on a public road, which could have started out as a private road through private property sometimes back, but now that becomes a public road, and we don't need any permission to use or to walk on a public road. Similarly, there are plenty of knowledge which are actually in the public domain, and we do not require any specific permission to use all those knowledge. But there is a thin line separating the common intellectual fund from the specific information or insight. Sometimes it's you must be thinking that who will decide whether a particular information or particular knowledge is in the public domain, or it's a specific information that needs to be cited. So it depends. One have to use their personal judgment. So for instance, the male-female ratio in India, suppose someone is doing male-female ratio, that study on male-female ratio in India, and you know that in Punjab and Haryana, the gender ratio is heavily in favor of males. Punjab and Haryana are the two states in India, two provinces in India, where males, the number of male children is more than the female children. This is in the public domain, everybody knew it. So there is no single source. The census of India, the newspapers, magazines, the TV channels, everybody talks about the same thing, that in Punjab and Haryana, the gender ratio is slightly skewed in favor of males. So there is no single source. And since there is no single source, one can use it just like a public information. So it is unnecessary to acknowledge such general information in most report. But if one wishes to state that the ratio is 861 females to 1000 males in Haryana and 1058 females to 1000 males in Kerala. Kerala is another state in India. So one have to acknowledge the source. In this case, the printed version of the report of Indian National Census can be used. So when we are actually using this specific information, 861 females to 1000 males, this is very specific. So people must be interested to know, like, what is the source of this information, that 861 to 1000. Then we have to refer to some document, some official document of the government. But if we are saying that male-female ratio is skewed in favor of the males, hello, please mute your mic. Okay. And what to do in case of doubt? If there is a doubt, what to do? So, my dear friends, it's always better to acknowledge, to be on the safer side. There is no harm. So, subjectivity, whether a piece of information pertains to the common intellectual fund or not, or in doubt, acknowledge the source when it can be traced. If there are certain source, there are multiple sources, you can acknowledge any of the source if it can be traced, if it is traceable. But if it can't be traced, suppose you cannot trace the source, then phrase the statement in a manner that clearly tells the reader that it is based on common belief without any supporting source. Now, how can you write? Like, it is commonly known or believed that. You can just start your sentence in this way. It is commonly known or believed that, or the general understanding is that. But one must understand that, one must realize that it will not have the kind of authority or the trustworthiness that properly documented statements have. So you can use it like, you can paraphrase it in this way, like it is commonly known, or it is believed, or it is a general understanding that, because the source is not traceable. But when it comes to the authority of the paper, trustworthiness of the paper, it will have slightly lesser authority and trustworthiness than a properly documented paper would have. And what is the reward for intellectual honesty? The question is, what will be benefited? If we are honest, then how we will be benefited? there is a reward for intellectual honesty. The first is the satisfaction of doing the right thing. That you are doing the right thing. You are not stealing someone else's property. You are not violating any of the rules. So that the satisfaction is the biggest reward for being intellectually honest. And it enhances the credibility without burdening the researcher with proportionate responsibility. Now here, it enhances the credibility. First thing is that the credibility of your paper will be enhanced. That you are making certain statements. Now what is the credibility? So you are making certain statement that is based on certain evidence. And what is that evidence? That references, the citations are the evidence that will enhance the credibility of your paper. And who will have that burden of being correct? The burden will be on those authors who has been cited in your paper. So you are not actually being burdened that you have to be correct, because you are basing your judgment on the shoulders of some other researchers who have done the work just before you, and you are citing their work. So the burden of being correct, it will be on them. And the reader may or may not take it seriously unless there is evidence that the person is an expert in the field and or that you have reviewed studies in the field. So the reader will take you seriously because you have written your paper, you are making your statement based on certain statements. Like Hindi cinema is, I have been to the Bangladesh couple of times. I knew that Hindi cinema is very popular in Bangladesh. And one very popular phrase in Hindi cinema is that whenever some courtroom scene is presented, that सभी सबूतों और बयानातों के आधार पर ये अदालत ताजिरात हिंद दफा 302 के तहत मुजरिम को सजाए मौत मुकर्रर करती है. Now the question is सभी सबूतों और बयानातों के आधार पर. So here your references will be your bayanat and data will be your evidence. So the reader will take you seriously if your paper is supported, if the statement that you are making in your paper is supported by some references, some evidence, then the reader will take you seriously, and that the authority and the authenticity of your paper will be enhanced if this is there. And this will be the biggest reward for intellectually honest. And without reference, it is simply considered as an opinion. That's the difference between a simple essay and a research paper. If there are references, it will be an authoritative research paper. And you can write a long document without any reference, but that will be simply the opinion of the author and it will not be considered as a research paper. So if the borrowed statements turns out to be fake, it is the responsibility of the original author that have been cited. It's not on you, because you have you have based your decision on the findings of those authors. Okay, and that's why you will find that in newspapers that as per the sources, as per the PTI or as per the BBC or as per the CNN. Suppose a local news agency, local news channel in Bangladesh is making some statements or doing some reporting or just reading some newspaper in the evening. They will say as per the CNN, as per the BBC. Why? Because if that news turns out to be fake, the responsibility does not lie on that local news channel. It is the responsibility of BBC or CNN or the Voice of America. And that's why if in research article also, if that statement turns out to be wrong, the responsibility, it lies on the authors who has been cited and not on you. That's the biggest reward for intellectually honest. And one thing is that you should go to the reliable sources. That's why you should go to the reliable sources. Simply you should not cite any material from the previous literature simply because it has been published. you should just test the authenticity and the reliability of the material that you are going to cite. So there are multiple ways of testing the reliability, like who is the publisher, what kind of journal it is, who is the author of that. These are the things you should look before citing a particular article or book or anything in your paper. Accurate acknowledgement makes it possible for them to go to the original source and study the issue in depth if they wish to. Because suppose you have just mentioned, you have quoted one line about that particular article in your paper, and later on someone else is reading your paper and they want to have a detailed idea about that one line or one sentence or one word that you have quoted in your paper, and the reference is available in the full bibliographical detail is available in the reference section. So suppose if I want to test the authenticity, the reliability of the source, or I want to just go in more detail into that particular paper, I can just trace that paper and read that paper and just have the detailed idea about the particular line or word that has been quoted in the paper. Now there are different levels of borrowing and citation. First one is that reproducing text word for word from the another source, that is direct quote, word by word, reproducing the text as it is without any editing. It's called direct quote. And another is the paraphrasing, that is putting it in your own words, ideas taken from the another work. And third one is the demonstrating awareness of or building an idea, observations, finding or suggestions contained in another work. So there are three levels of borrowing. One is the direct quote, second one is the paraphrasing, and third one is demonstrating. Paraphrasing is known to you that you are writing the same thing someone else has done in your own word, and demonstrating is that if you are suppose giving some suggestions, then you can just put some references that you are not the only one who is suggesting it, but so and so, so and so, so and so have also done or suggested the similar thing. That is called demonstration. So there are three levels of borrowing. And the fourth one is the acknowledgement. It should reflect the kind of borrowing you should have. So acknowledging a source has two elements. One is citation or the minimal information about the source at the spot in the document where you use the borrowed idea. In the running text, some information has to be there. Suppose you are writing something, and in the main document, that is some information about the source will be given just by way of some referencing, some indication, and it is called citation. And later on, full bibliographical detail will be given at elsewhere in the document, that is normally in the form of references, which is given normally at the end of the paper, and the section is called either reference or bibliography. There is a just fine line of difference between bibliography and reference. A reference is only those papers which are actually cited in the paper are given in the reference. Bibliography, it is just little more elaborate, that the papers or the books or the documents that are given in bibliography may not be actually cited in the main document, but they have been used for writing the paper. For example, you are writing some paper on marketing, and say on service marketing, or to be very specific, service marketing, the marketing of healthcare services. And for marketing of healthcare services, you have used a lot of research papers. You have downloaded some research papers and you are using them for your work. You have cited all the authors whosoever have been used at relevant places, and in the reference section, the full bibliographical detail of all the papers have been given. That is called reference. But for writing a paper on marketing, suppose to understand the concept of marketing, to understand the concept of service marketing, you have read the book by Philip Kotler, or you have read the book by Michael Porter to understand strategy, or Peter Drucker. These are books you have read. So that Philip Kotler is not actually directly being quoted in the paper, but Philip Kotler will be the part of your bibliography. But Philip Kotler, since it is not the cited in the paper, it will not be the part of reference section. So if you are writing bibliography, bibliography is just a little more elaborate form of referencing, like referencing plus references, that is the work that has been cited in the paper plus some other work which is not directly cited in the paper but have been used for building the concept or writing the paper. So depending on the referencing style followed, there are differences in the way both these are done. So but the principle is same. Cite the source so briefly in the text document that it is adequately identified. It identifies the source without distracting the readers, but supply its full bibliographical detail later for them to go where it is necessary. So there are different styles of referencing, but in all the styles, one thing is common, that citation and reference. Where the citation will be coming in the running text, when the main paper is written in the running text, citation will be coming just by way of some indication. Sometimes it may be by just number 1, 2, 3, or sometimes just by one small indication that the surname and year of publication, or sometimes in some other form just indication is given, so that the reader will continue to read that paper without distracting the flow. And later on, at the end of the paper, the full bibliographical detail for that particular paper will be given, and it is given in such a way that the reader will be able to trace that paper easily. So there are different ways of acknowledging. Let us understand it. Suppose managers as change agent. This is an article written by Adrian Farham, published in August 2002 in the Journal of Change Management, Volume 3, Issue 1, page number 21 to 29. Now the full bibliographical details to be supplied in reference, or the work cited, or bibliography at the end of the document. As I told, reference, work cited means the same thing. Bibliography goes beyond the source cited and it lists relevant sources that have been consulted or are aware of but not used in the document. I have already explained it. Okay. So suppose there is a direct quote. We have used, few companies have courage as a core competency. Suppose this is the line, the lines in red. Few companies have courage as a core competency. This line are exactly reproduced from the work of Farham. So here you will find that Farham, and within bracket the year of publication and the page number is also given. This is the uniqueness of the direct quote, that in case of direct quote we used to give the page number. Had it been indirect quote, page number will not be given. That's the only difference between the direct reference quote and indirect quote. So here page number is also given. So few companies have courage as a core competency. So here Farham 2002 P23. Now what is the difference? Here the name of the author is at the beginning of the line, and that's why this Farham is not within the bracket but the year of publication and the page number is in bracket. And the same thing we can put it like few companies have courage as a core competency, the same line, but here the reference the citation we are giving at the end of the line. So here when actually the citation is given at the end of the line, the entire surname, only surname, and the year of publication and page, everything will be in the bracket. So follow the wording, spelling and interior punctuation of the original source even if the source is incorrect. This is the mandate, that even if the source is incorrect, you are not, if you are following the direct quote, then follow the wording, spelling and interior punctuation. Even the punctuations, just see here, few companies have courage as a core competency. Here we have as it is, it has been spelled without any change. If there would have been any punctuation, those punctuations would also have been used in the same way. And even if the source is incorrect, we need not to bother for that. We have to use it, and our responsibility, we are relieved of our responsibility since we have given the citation that Farham 2002 page 23. We have given this. So even if it is wrong, that's the beauty of giving the direct quote. Even if this line is wrong, the responsibility is on Farham and not on us. So, but thing is that use direct quotes very sparingly, very to the extent minimum. You should not use direct quote very frequently. So only when it is necessary for conveying the meaning contained in the source text without any dilution or distortion, then only we should use the direct quote. Suppose you are using some direct quote from, say, Sheikh Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So here you have to use the direct quote, the word by word, spelling by spelling, punctuation by punctuation. Those quotes have to be used. Okay. So because if you just try to paraphrase it, it will be distorted and it will not give the same impact if like it would have been given had it been quoted directly. Like in India, there is like the quote by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, give me blood, I will give you freedom. So this give me blood, I will give you freedom, this is a direct quote, and we will try to paraphrase it, the whole spirit of this sentence will be lost. And that's why it is always better to go for the direct quote for this kind of statements, where if you are paraphrasing it, the whole meaning is distorted. But we should avoid direct quote to the extent possible, because if we are doing that, then the whole document will be the collage of just quotes. Only the quotes will be there in the whole document. That is not good for a research paper. And it seeks the copyright owner's permission for quoting substantially from the copyrighted work. Because if you are using someone else's work, even if it is a direct quote, more than certain number of words, in India it is more than 500 words. So if it is more than 500 words you are quoting, even if it is direct quote, even it is by way of acknowledging, given proper citations, then also you have to take permission from the owner of that copyright. Okay, so that's why you should not use direct quote to the extent possible. Like here, only up to 500 words can be quoted without permission from the copyrighted journals. And if you are to quote more than 500 words, you have to take permission. Omitting words from a direct quote. It must be indicated by using 3 dots. Suppose you are using some word, direct quote, and that direct quote is very long, maybe 3-4 lines, and these are very popular, and you don't want to reproduce the entire 3 or 4 lines as it is. So you can just write the first 3 words and then 3 dots and the last 3 words. For example, there is a huge fund of knowledge that belongs to everyone, rather like public roads. Suppose the line within the inverted comma, there is a huge fund of knowledge that belongs to everyone, rather like public roads. And it can also be written as there is a huge fund of knowledge ... rather like public roads. So here that belongs to everyone, that has been omitted. Similarly here, this is just a 2-line sentence. Suppose if it would have been 5 or 6 lines, then we can just start the first sentence and the last sentence, and the like first 3-4 words and the last 3-4 words, and just in between we can just put 3 dots, and the line will be assumed to be complete. So one should not omit words in such a way that the meaning is distorted. One have to just here also one have to take care that if the omission of words will lead to the distortion of the sentence, then one should avoid doing that. And one should use this omitting of the words in only those situations when that particular line or sentence is very popular, everybody knows it, and that it is not justifiable, or even if that the words are omitted, everybody knew what actually is that sentence, so that can be omitted. Introducing anything, comment or explanation within a quote. Within a quote also some explanation can be inserted and put it in a square bracket. For example, we have spent rupees 5 crore. Now my dear friends, this 5 crore, this is very popular in Asia. In India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, people understand 5 crore, but had it been in USA, they do not understand, they are not very familiar with these crores and lakhs, rather they are familiar with the millions and billions. So even within the direct quote, one explanation can be inserted, that instead of 5 crore, along with 5 crore, you just be giving a square bracket you can write 50 million on advertising alone. So we have spent rupees 5 crore, that is 50 million on advertising alone, that can be given. Since then, now then means when? Since 1997, you want to specify since then. So it is 1997, we have never visited a top business school for recruitment. In these two examples, the term 50 million and 1997 have been introduced by the writer to improve the clarity of the quoted text. Now the next level of citation is, or this acknowledgement is the paraphrasing, or it's borrowing. Like suppose Farhan singles out courage to take risk, courage to deal with the emotions of co-workers, and courage to stand up for one's values and beliefs as the most important requirement for a manager interested in initiating and managing changes in his organization. This is Farhan 2002 singles out courage. This is paraphrasing. Now, unlike in a direct quote, page numbers are not needed here. Here, if you remember, when we have used that one particular sentence of Farham, we have used P23. But here we have presented the things in a such a way that the idea belongs to Farham in an article published in the year 2002, but we are not quoting it as it is, line by line, word by word, spelling by spelling. We are not doing it. We are just writing it in our own words. Like Farham singles out courage. What he tell about courage? Courage to take risk, courage to deal with the emotions of co-workers, and courage to stand up for one's values and belief as the most important requirement for a manager interested in initiating and managing change in his organization. So acknowledge the source in such a way that readers can easily make out what is own and what has been borrowed. If one intersperses her own sentence with paraphrased text, acknowledge the source in each sentence where he or she used borrowed ideas, or introduce the paraphrased text in such a way that the reader knows where it starts and where it ends. For example, consider the following. Farham 2002 points out the importance of courage in organizational change process. This is the sentence by Farham. This not sentence. This has been borrowed from the Farham's article. After that, there are several other work that outline other factors influencing the change process. Here, the article of this author, this line belongs to him. And after that, he is further quoting Farham 2002, that Farham 2002 also points out specific forms of courage. Here, Farham have been cited 2 times because this is important to distinguish that Farham here in the first part and the second part, that these lines belongs to Farham, and in the middle this line does not belong to Farham. This is the author's own version of our own explanation of the state of the affairs. Then the third level of borrowing is the demonstrating awareness of others' work. So at this level of borrowing, one wishes to indicate to the reader that you are aware of important and relevant contributions to the subject. And you may do this to indicate sources that take a position contrary to your own or support yours. So several scholars, like when you are writing, the several scholars, for example, Farham 2002, Perel 2002, have emphasized the need for courage, especially the courage to take risk. So here, as Farham 2002 and Perel 2002 argued that managers also who pursue innovation and change ought to have the courage to take risk. Here, this citation is just as have a demonstration value, not anything else. And this kind of citations, like those who have some experience of writing papers, this comes normally in the discussion and conclusion section or the implication section. That when you are giving some suggestions, suggesting some policy implications, then along with that you are citing some others' works also. Like you are not the only one who is giving this kind of suggestion or who is coming up with this kind of finding, but there are other people also who have arrived at the similar finding. And here the borrowing or the citation will be having that demonstration value, that you just wanted to demonstrate that this you are not the only one who arrived at the similar finding, but others are also there. Now come to this APA style. So here APA style, Khandwala and Mehta 2004 P15. states that organizations in emerging economies may need innovative organizational redesigning if they want to increase managerial productivity. So here the words are within the quote innovative organizational redesigning. This is direct quote, and that's why this P15 is given. The page number is given. Had it been indirect quote, page number would not have been given. And in the reference section, what will be there? The surname will be coming first, then comma. Just listen very carefully. Everything is very important here. Comma, punctuations, everything. Khandwala, comma, then P.N. P.N is the initial of that particular author. Maybe it is Prabhunath or Prannath or something. So P.N, again comma, and Mehta. Mehta is the surname of the second author, comma, then K. Dot, then 2004. This is the year of publication. Then we'll write Design of Corporate Creativity. This is the name of the article. And then Vikalpa, the journal for decision makers. This is the name of the journal. And here we find that Vikalpa, the journal for decision makers, it is given in italics. So the first part, Khandewala, PN and Mehta K 2004 Design of Corporate Creativity, it is given not in italics, but the name of the journal is given in italics. So this has to be followed in APA style. Now what about the Harvard style? According to Khandewala and Mehta, here Khandewala and Mehta and 2004 colon dash 15. Just see the difference. Here 2004 comma P15. Here it is comma P.15 is coming, but here in Harvard style 2004 colon dash 15 innovations in and other things will follow. And in the reference section it is Khandewala comma PN. Now here see what is the difference. P in APA style it is P.N. but here it is PN and Mehta K. Dot. Now this 2004 is not in bracket. In APA style it used to be in bracket, but here it is not in bracket. And then Design of Corporate Creativity, this is within the single inverted comma. Here the Design of Corporate Creativity, it was not in single inverted comma, and it was dot and dot here, but here it will be not dot, rather it will be within the single inverted comma and comma. Then Vikalpa, the journal for decision makers, here volume 29 number 1 pp 1328 will be given. Now here in APA style, just see, it is volume and issue was not written. 29 1 13 28. Here volume 29 number 1 pp 13 to 28. This is given in this style. Another is called Chicago style. Chicago style, it is developed by the University of Chicago. The latest available guide is the Chicago Manual of Style, 15th edition, published in 2003. It has two versions, for humanities and for science. We are dealing with the humanities, so the humanities version is the Khandewala and Mehta. Now here the year of publication is not, we'll sign just some numbers are there, 23, and at the foot of the page, in the same page, you will find 23 P.N. Khandewala and K. Mehta, Design of Corporate Creativity, Vikalpa, the journal of decision makers, 29-1 2004. The 29 is the volume, 1 is the issue, 2004 is the year of publication, 13 to 28 is the page number. Okay. So there is no need for section called reference at the end of the paper. Here in Chicago style, there is no separate reference section because the references are given at the foot, at the bottom of the paper, at the bottom of every page where that citation is appearing. So that's why there is no need for section called reference at the end of the paper. And if, however, the writer of a book or longish paper provides such a section called bibliography, the entries will be arranged alphabetically according to author surnames. Bibliography can be given. Khandewala, P.N. and K. Mehta 2004 design. Okay, this is fine. Then scientific version will not go to that. Then another style called MLA style. This MLA style is very popular for this language. People like Bangla or Hindi or Sanskrit or Assamese or French, German. These researchers are doing some research, so they normally used to follow MLA style. So according to Khandewala and Mehta, this 15 is that just indication, innovative, organizational, and then here say Khandewala, and in the reference section under the heading 15, this entire Khandewala, PN and Mehta design of corporate creativity will be given. Then IEEE style, this is normally used by the engineers according to 12, only 12. Now what is there in the 12? So in the footnote in the reference section against this 12, this entire detail, PN Khandewala and K Mehta design of corporate creativity Vikalpa, the Journal for Decision Makers, volume 29, number 1, pp 1328, January March 2004. This will be given. This is IEEE style. This is normally used by the engineers and the science faculty. Okay. Now, there are so many things, so I will not go to all these things. I will just be coming. I will be very brief now. Now, these notes. Sometimes you will find that in some papers, some notes are there. Now, what is notes? So the meaning of note is a short piece of writing that is used to help someone remember something. That is notes. But in the footnote, an extra piece of information that is added at the bottom of a page in a book. That is footnote. Endnote, just like footnote, if the same piece of information is given on the same page at the foot, it is footnote, and if it is given at the end of the paper or the book, it is endnote. And why footnote? This footnote, they cite references or comment on a designated part of the text above it, like on something that it will be given. And for example, say you want to add an interesting comment to a sentence you have written, but the comment is not directly related to the argument of your paragraph, so you can just give it by way of a footnote. Then another is the appendix. Why appendix? Appendix is normally some detailed data or documentation or some information which is given, which is directly related to the paper, but if that is included in the paper, it will make the paper relatively clumsy. So, and it will the reader will lose interest in it. So it can be put in the appendix part. So appendix contains material that is too detailed to include in the main report, such as the long mathematical derivations or calculations, detailed technical drawings, or tables of raw data. So each appendix must be referred to by number or letter at the relevant point. Like in the paper, you can write like suppose you are writing some paper and you have collected data based on the questionnaire. So questionnaire can be placed in the appendix, and in the main paper, in the methodology section, you can write that the data has been collected based on the questionnaire which is given in appendix number 1 or 2. Similarly, some data can be given in appendix, maybe appendix 1 is questionnaire, appendix 2 is some long mathematical derivations that can be given in the appendix. And why appendix? So they provide the reader with information that supports your study without breaking up the narrative or distracting the main purpose of your paper. And if you have a lot of raw data or information that is difficult to present in textual form, put it in appendix. And it also helps in avoiding plagiarism, because if the same thing is put in the paper, it might be considered as a plagiarism. But if the same thing is placed in the appendix, many journals, they do not consider appendix as the part of the paper, and that's why that will not be considered for calculating the plagiarism of that paper. So now